What's up, everybody? It's another episode of Unturned Pages. Tonight, we are going to be joined by sister and brother Pam Harris and Steve Workman, and we are going to be discussing their book that they just published. It is called The Bug's Life Before the Mafia. As you can tell tonight, Jenny is not here. As you all know or should know or don't know, she is at Booze on Battleship in North Carolina, and so she will not be with me tonight. So if you guys have any questions, please shout them out. But it's been a long week for me. Really tired, a lot going on. Our team, Eternal Paranormal, we were just at the Masonic Lodge in Keysburg, Illinois, the 1861 Masonic Lodge. And we are hosting their first public investigation this Saturday. For those that have purchased a ticket for that, we captured some amazing evidence there, and we really look forward to doing the public investigation. So without further ado, I am going to welcome in Pam Harris and Steve Workman.
Hi.
Hello.
How you doing? How are you?
Hi, Pam.
I'm good.
I'm good. I'm all right.
Good.
Let's bring in Steve.
Lisa, hello, Pam.
Hi.
Hey, Steve. How's it going?
Good, thanks. Very good. Bitchin'.
Very nice to meet you.
That's his favorite
That's
thing.
good. I need that energy. Bring it.
Yeah, he'll bring it.
So, bring it on. So, Pam and Steve, tell us a little bit about your guys' selves.
I'm retired, of course. My hobby is I like to repurpose furniture, so I do that a lot. But lately I've been writing this book, so it's taken us quite a while, but it's out there now, so thank goodness. That's all I got.
So,
What about you, Steve?
I live in San Diego quite some time. We're obviously both from Indiana, and so I'm retired. I'm not very good at doing nothing, but I'm getting better at it.
I don't know how no one can not like retirement. I love it. Your own time, do what you want, or you don't do anything. That's the best thing.
So what inspired you guys to want to write this book about bugs before the mafia?
Well, our dad had done research most of his life looking for his dad, which is Charlie the Bug Workman. And he passed away about 27 years ago. And so since then, every once in a while, I'd try to jump in there and try to finish off something. But the last couple of years have been really heavy into it. I never thought about publishing a book. Our cousin was here one day and he said, your dad would be so proud of everything that you've done, and you really need to put it into a book. And I was like, I don't know how to write a book. And everybody was like, yeah, that's a good idea. You should do it. You should do it. Oh, thanks. So then I, asked Steve to help me out because, I'm one of 8 kids. So, and not all the kids are interested in it, care less about it. There's only a few of us that really are enticed by it. But we've also found out that there's extended family very interested in it. So that has helped, tremendous and that's what's created this book, is our family stories from other family members. So that's how that happened.
So who's Charlie the Bug Workman?
He's our grandfather, our dad's
So,
dad.
so the story starts when our dad was 6 years old. He overheard a conversation between his mom and his dad was leaving, and he didn't understand why. So it made him pretty upset. His dad's leaving, and he's not coming back. And so he watched him drive away. And so for the rest of his life, he was always trying to find his dad. All through, he served in the Navy in World War II. There's some stories about efforts he made at the time, efforts his brothers made, and even afterwards. Um, but what kind of gelled everything together that put us on our journey was his, I think it was a cousin of his, had sent him some pages from a book that she had on the Workman family history. And I remember getting copies of that because he shared it with everyone once any information he would have. Um, and so he shared this information, and he was here in San Diego probably about 85, and he was trying really hard to find that book. So we went to the San Diego library, um, and told the librarian what we were looking for. And she says, okay, over there on that shelf, it looked like encyclopedias if you're old enough to remember what those are. But it was a whole bunch of books.
Mm-hmm.
She said, those books list all of the genealogy books ever written. And this book was researched in the 20s and 30s, and then it was published in the early 60s. And so here we are in 1985 trying to find it. And we thought, well, great, we'll just go over to the W's and look up Workman. And the librarian laughed and said, that's not how it works. They're listed by author. And we're like, okay, we have all day. So we went over and pulled out the A, looking at all the authors whose names started with A, looking up all these genealogy books. And it turns out the author's name was Anderson. So, as luck would have it, um, I got a hold of the publisher, who I think was in Boston at the time, and bought the last two copies of the book that Pam has. It's a hardbound book, it's a couple inches thick. Um,
Very.
and so, in that book, our dad is listed and all of his siblings. And so, it's like almost 850 pages. Um, so it lists our dad and his parents and their parents all the way back to the 1600s. And the way they did that research at the time is they went through um, like county birth records, death records, marriage records, took them all the way back to the Revolutionary War. And then when they got back to England and Scotland, they looked at church records that would have baptisms, marriages, deaths, all of that. And it even provided a coat of arms
Mm-hmm.
for us. So we were able to find that. And from that, we learned that there's the coat of arms. And everything on there has a different meaning to it, you know, the birds with no feet, the moons, all of that. So it was pretty interesting for us as workmen to read those things. So what we found by reading that book is Charles Workman had a wife before our grandmother. And so one of the first stories, one of the first family stories, kind of confirmed by this book, was that previous marriage, they had a child, named him Robert. They were then divorced, and Charlie married our grandmother. And this is where the family stories come in because um, how old was Robert? Like 8 or 9?
9, and
He
Dad
was
was
9.
6.
So when Robert was 9, his mother brought him to our grandmother, and our family story was his mother said, I'm just too sick. I can't manage raising a little boy. Would you adopt him and raise him?" Um, and so our grandmother agreed to do that.
She
So
didn't
that was,
adopt him; she just took him in.
well, yeah. And then in the
Yeah.
divorce
So
papers,
Charlie's
Charlie's
son,
son
first
right,
son.
ended up with Charlie's new wife's
right,
new wife.
exactly.
Oh, okay.
And they had 4 kids. Charlie and his new wife had 4 kids, and the oldest was our father, William. I'm not going to get too deep in all of this family tree stuff, but these are the characters, and so
Yeah.
that was our family story. Was that he was brought to our grandmother, and so they had 4 children, and shortly after, very actually, the fourth one was like 3 months old. So
Mm-hmm.
in 1929, Charlie left. That's when our dad saw him drive away. And so a few years later, our grandmother files for divorce, and she's granted custody of 5 children, even though she had 4. So the fifth one was Robert from the first marriage.
So she
And
really didn't have to. She really didn't have to um, explain Robert because they all had the same last name. So
so
she
things
just
Yeah.
were done differently in
they
the
had
early
5 kids.
30s.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that story is relevant, and we can get into it a little bit later on. And so it was pretty well known amongst the family, talking about family stories, that Charlie was involved with the mafia. Um, and so that story kind of prevailed. Um, and so through Pam's research, which she's done for the last like 25 years, identified all of these marriages and deaths in addition to what was in the book, and also identified that when Charlie left the family, he may have gone to Chicago for a brief period of time, but he ended up in New York City. And the records she found there was he gave a whole different birthday, made himself 10 years younger, and used our grandmother's month and
Huh.
day for his birthday. And he also made himself Jewish because he was from a Christian family.
Mm-hmm.
And so why that's relative is in the early 30s, there was 2 divisions, if you will, of the mafia. One of them was Italian from Sicily. He had to be from Sicily to be of any stature in the mafia. And the other one, other arm of the mafia, if you will, was Jewish. He had to be Jewish to be of any stature in there. And the way those 2 work together is
Really?
the Italian mafia really liked it because the Jewish mafia had these hitmen, these enforcers, if you will, that would go in and enforce things. And later on, the press called them Murder Incorporated, and the name just stuck. And the reason the Italian mafia liked that because they're like, we can hire these guys. All we have to do is tell them, here's who you put the hit on, and here's what we know about it. That's it. So the Jewish mafia would go do the hit, and if they got caught or tied up in any way, they
Yeah.
didn't know who directed them to do it. They didn't know what the beef was. They were just following orders and went through and did the hit.
Yeah.
And so it worked out for a long time.
So mafia groups kind of work together. You do this for me, and I'll give you this. So it was just like a win-win for both because they both got what they wanted. This hit got done, and he made money, or whatever the
Right.
situation might
Right.
be. Yeah. So that's how that worked.
So what do you think, Anais?
I apologize. My internet is super laggy today.
Oh, okay.
So if you guys don't hear me responding right away, it's lagging really bad to me. And I
Okay.
don't want
We've
to
had those
jump
issues.
out and then us lose everything.
I get it.
But I was just thinking, was he Charles in Chicago at the time? Do you think to speak with like Al Capone? Do you think he had ties with Al Capone or with the Jewish gangs?
Yeah,
and
I
stuff
believe
to change his name.
we can't prove it. We
There's
can't
no
prove
real-
it, but
no arrest records. There's no historical data,
right.
but we do have some family stories that sent him to Chicago for legitimate work. So
Right.
he was in the area, and next thing you know, he leaves the family to be in the mafia.
Right.
And so we just
And not only that, but Al Capone's nephew was in New York with Charlie in the mafia. So not just Al Capone.
Oh,
He wasn't, Al Capone was more in Chicago, which it would have been made more sense to be closer to home for Charlie to be able to check out what was going on with his children, which he did. But if he was in New York the whole time, that's way too far for him to be doing that. So once he goes to New York, that stopped. So, hi, Lori.
And so the other thing is the family stories that we grew up with, that we've been told. We're finding out there's more than what we've heard, because right before we published the book, we got some family stories from our cousins that we had never heard of. So we put a pause on publishing the book, incorporated those stories, and right now they're in there. But we're always learning more. What did I want to tell you about a family story?
Well, let's start with Charlie's first,
what
the first marriage. I have contacted that extended family. So his first wife's extended family, we have contact with.
And they're only like 30 miles away from our hometown.
Right.
So this whole time, they've known
Okay.
about Charlie very well.
And they
documented.
were actually going to church with another cousin of ours who's a pastor and didn't connect the name. They didn't even know it.
So,
Oh, wow.
so in that connection, Pam, I guess it was a couple of years ago, was able to go and meet with that family, and then so now you can share family stories. And that family story I told you about, where his first wife brought Robert to our grandmother. So Pam, you can tell that story, how that was received.
So which story am I saying?
When their grandmother brought Robert to stay with our grandmother.
Okay, so when I met with them and I told them our story that we've always heard, they said, no, we'll tell you the story we've always heard. Is when Charles left his first wife he took Robert with him and would not give him back. That would make more sense to me than a woman giving up her child. That just doesn't seem logical.
Yeah.
So, their story is more believable to me than ours, even though we do have our own story. But, these are family stories that we grew up knowing. People have talked about it, and throughout our life, there have been books written about him. There's been all kinds of things on TV. There's a lot of YouTubers out there that are Mafia. There's a lot of Facebook groups for Mafia, and he's in those, So, um,
So what's different about our book is that we start before
the
all of the
Mafia,
press starts, all the other movies and other books start. We start with his life back when he was born in Indiana, not in New
right?
York City. So this is his life before the Mafia, and it goes up, and it actually there's a lot of ties, you know, from then till now,
Yeah.
contacts that we've made, other things that have happened, that kind of ties it all together.
And so, not only did he just change his date of birth.
So what?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So I was going to ask, does it talk about like why he kind of joined the mafia then, or do you guys have any stories about why he might have
I
in the
only
book?
that he did it to protect his family. But you can only assume because, he,
So just think about 1929,
yeah,
and the opportunities were scarce. He
right,
was looking for work. He had experience as an auto mechanic. We actually have an historical book about his hometown with a picture of him with four other guys in front of this shop, and he's listed Charles O. Workman, and it gives his history and talks about his first marriage, his second marriage, and how he left. So he had experience as an auto mechanic, um, and in 1929 he's looking for work, and that's when he left the family. And so some of the family stories that we have that we hadn't heard of before about that, is our dad told our cousins, actually our cousins' sons, about when he was very young. He would play in a park nearby his home, and he would see this black car, and it really caught his eye because it was a fancy car, like a Cadillac or something that you wouldn't normally see in his neighborhood. And he couldn't tell who was driving it. The guy pulled his hat down, you really couldn't see his face. But the story is he would then go home, and every time this happened, he would find an envelope in the mailbox with money in it. And he did this to describe the envelope to our cousin's sons. And this story we had never heard, but
right,
they said, man, he told this with passion, and he would tell us the same thing every time.
yeah,
And so the cousin's son, that story is in our book, and the cousin's son was so moved by that, he actually got a car door from a 1941 sedan of some kind and put Charlie's picture in it and put Motor Incorporated right above the handle. And we thought that was so cool. Here it is. It's just based on a story our dad told that we had never heard. We decided to use it for the back of the book. And so he was surprised that we put his story in the book
I really
and
love
we
that
moved it
picture,
for the
actually.
back.
yeah, I do too. He
And
was,
so
yeah,
that story gives Chicago for a
Oh,
short time because our dad seeing that a couple times kind of makes sense. It was only like 200 miles away, that he was probably in Chicago, but then we find records of him in New York City. And so the other thing our dad did was, under the Freedom of Information Act, he requested the FBI files on his dad, Charles Workman. Well, they didn't come in until after he had passed, shortly after he passed away in January of '98. And so those records, we have a couple copies of it.
Yeah, I think every
It's
kid got one. So
304 pages about Charles Workman, alias Charlie the Bug, and all of his associates, which includes Louis Lepke, Dutch Schultz, Emmanuel Weiss, Kid Twist, Abraham Morellis. All of these mafia names, they're in the file for Charlie. And so we've had this since '98.
yeah,
But and so a lot of the pages are redacted. They're hard to read, even missing. But I just recently sat down. That's really paranormal. She's on there twice.
I know. I think she needs to log off at one. There she goes. Wow. Okay.
All right. I am so sorry. I was just like, I can't do this anymore. It's so laggy. So I apologize. I figured it out. I'm like, I'm just going to get on my phone.
Twice. I was amazed. It was like time travel. So I was talking about the FBI file. And so we've had these for a long time. And I sat down and read through the whole thing. It took me most of a day. I had never done that. And I just learned so much. For example, the initial investigation involving the FBI had to do, I believe they were looking at Dutch Schultz and his ties to what they called a fur dress investigation. Hello, Adam.
Hi, Adam.
And so what Dutch and some of the other ones were doing is they were requiring people in the garment business to use certain suppliers and certain companies, and they were taking a cut off. They would get paid on a regular basis. Actually, it was Burkhalter that was doing that, who was alias is Louis Lepke. So that's how the investigation starts, and it doesn't start until December of '38. And so,
and involved your grandpa.
I'm sorry.
And that's involved your grandpa, you said?
Yes.
Oh.
So
Okay.
he was interviewed early on because people started talking. So let me give you some background on this entire Mafia effort and the FBI effort. So Thomas Dewey was appointed as a special prosecutor by the governor of New York to prosecute these Mafia people running all of these scams and forcing people to give them to pay them protection plans, things like that. And so one of the bosses, Dutch Schultz, came to the committee of the Mafia and said, you know what, we have to take out this prosecutor, Thomas Dewey, because not only is he prosecuting us, he's sending people to the electric chair. And he was really coming after Dutch Schultz. And so Dutch is telling his buddies, we need to take him out. Well, cooler heads prevailed. Albert Anastasia, Louis Lepke, and some other ones said, Dutch, we don't take out law enforcement. We don't take out government officials. It would just bring too much attention on our operations. We can't afford for that to happen. Well, Dutch was the most threatened by Thomas Dewey. And so Dutch said, if you won't do it, then I will. And he started to put a plan in place. He was tailing Dewey. He knew his routine. He was within about 24 hours of doing a hit on Thomas Dewey. Well, the rest of the mafia said, okay, we need to put together a team of hitmen and take out Dutch Schultz. So in 1935, the team consisted of Charlie the Bug Workman, Emanuel Weiss, and a driver with a nickname of Picky. It really doesn't become any more substantial than that. And so they found where Dutch Schultz was having a meeting with his bodyguards one night. There were 3 other people with him. And so they go into this bar and shoot all of them. Dutch Schultz lives for like one more day. And the local police and the FBI thought, well, this is just a gang dispute over territory. There's nothing more to it. And so they just kind of left it and moved on. Well, as the prosecution got handed off to other prosecutors, they were still going after mafia people and sending them to the electric chair. And so some of them said, you know what? The only way I can save myself is if I can talk. And that's the worst thing you can do in the mafia. So a couple of them started to talk and tell the FBI about the hit on Dutch Schultz. And they basically fingered Charlie. And so Charlie's nickname, Charlie the Bug, is because he could do a hit and he was never emotional about it. Never bothered him. He completed the task and just kept moving. So they called him the Bug. Mm-hmm. And so a couple of them started talking, and it's interesting. You can see it in the FBI files. They start questioning Charlie like in 1938, and it took them a long time with a lot of questions before they had these other 2 people come forward. And so now they were prosecuting all of these people. They were getting ready to prosecute Charlie. So they actually had him up on trial with a murder charge. And like we were saying, there's so many other books written about this, about exactly what happens. But one of the books says one of his associates, Abram Morales, whose nickname was Kid Twist, was going to testify, and it would have thrown Charlie's case. He would have clearly been convicted. He had just had someone testify. He was working for me in this funeral home, and I have his time card, so he couldn't have been anywhere else, especially in that restaurant, killing Dutch Schultz. Well, on cross-examination, the guy admitted it was a lie. That's not true at all. So a lot of things kind of fell in place. And so Charlie says he basically pleads no contest, which means I'm not pleading guilty, but I can't defend myself on the evidence
Right.
that you have. So he's sentenced to life in prison, which at the time was 12 and a half years. And so when he would come up for parole, they still wanted to get him to talk. And so he would just deny everything. And they would, instead of, pretty common at the time, they might add 6 or 8 months to someone's sentence. They would add 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
He would come up
He
in,
still wouldn't talk.
wouldn't talk. They'd add another 6 years.
Right.
That's not,
So he ends up spending 23 years in prison.
wow.
So the family he had in New York, he was married in New York, had a son. His son was also 6 when he went to prison. He was 29 when he gets out.
29, yeah.
So, I mean, this child also went without his dad, not just our dad's family, but this child did too. But the mafia took care of this family in New York the entire time he was in prison. His wife never missed a visit. She missed one visit in 23 years. So they were well taken care of while he was in there. So he gets released in 64 after 23 years in prison. And he still never talked after all that time. Well, the son that he had in New York, he becomes a famous PGA golfer.
Oh,
And so his son wrote a book, From Motor Incorporated to the PGA Tour.
wow.
And it's really interesting because his son has family stories just like we do,
Yeah.
that this is what he was told his entire life.
Right.
So his son talks about all of these other people that were associates of Charlie because they called him all uncle, you know.
Yeah. Everybody was uncle. So,
Right.
I mean, they took him to state fairs or whatever. They did all those things. The mafia did. There was always someone set in place to take his wife money once a week, and that's just how it was. That's how the mafia worked because they took care of their own, So Charlie, huh?
You guys never got to meet him.
Oh no, he died in 79. Yeah, he dies in 79.
So we had heard stories, but we had no idea even where to look.
Right.
And neither did our dad.
Yeah.
He was trying everything he could.
I mean, you got to remember the only research our dad had was a telephone book, a library, or to write a letter somewhere, and hopefully it was the right address.
If he did have a contact, most he could do is write them a letter. And if he had a phone number, long distance, you had a different operator and a different charges. So it's not something you would do very often.
Right.
Yeah, I understand that now. Yep, that makes complete sense. We have it so easy now.
Yeah, I mean, completely. I mean, if our dad would have had the internet like we have now, he would have found everything and probably more than what I have. So,
And I mean, like, looking through those, the encyclopedias, like now they have like ancestry DNA and stuff now, where it, breaks down your genealogy, like I just got done doing one. I'm surprised to find out that I'm not like a whole bunch of Scottish and Irish, that I'm actually like Wales and like Northern Europe, and like I'm like, what?
yeah.
But I was gonna say, like, it's awesome that you guys are able to like tell your guys' side of the story, instead of like all these other people out there that are doing these YouTube videos and stuff, like this is your guys' relative, not theirs, you know?
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah, they have their story, but we also have a story. I mean,
exactly.
and every family has stories. So, you know, and that's where people rely on, you know, as they get older, especially when their parents are gone and things like that. I remember this or that, you know, that's where family stories are important. And that's what made this book is family stories.
I love that.
Yeah. And
There's
so,
too much togetherness anymore, or kids
yeah,
wanting to know their past relatives or anything, you know, and researching their past.
right.
And I've been doing it for 25 years yet, so that's real dedication.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, it was something that was really important to our dad. And really, I find it, you know, intriguing to read and, you know, learn. And when I find something that we never knew before, that's even more exciting, you know.
And also, it's like, it makes me feel really sad to know that your dad held on to this for so long, wanting to know where his dad was and what he was doing this whole time. Like, that's really, like, it gets me because thinking about my
Yeah.
kids
Yeah.
having me and, like, where did she go? What is she doing? Like, leaving them at that age.
Yeah.
So there's so many stories in this little bitty book. There's so many
A lot of detail in a short.
puzzles solved, other information, and it's because all of these stories all come together um, with Charlie, and we're finding out. You know, Pam and I spent a lot of time going back and forth, sharing files, changing things, adding things, and so um, once it was published,
And it was like, what do we do now? I thought I was supposed to talk to you today.
well, in all honesty, though, we really haven't stopped.
No.
We're still putting things together. We're still adding to it, um, and so you know, there's things um, that um, that will add to the book,
Yeah.
basically. And so we've started that. One of the things is going through the FBI file, basically month by month, from 38 to about 42, and just pulling out all the different highlights and the different things, what they're discovering and what they're finding out, and how they um, processed the case and moved ahead in the case. So, one of the stories, and I want to talk about the book being available on Amazon. It's
Yeah.
available in audio, it's available in Kindle, and it's available in paperback, like you saw me hold up. So, if you go to Amazon and go to the search bar, you can type in Pam's name or type in my name, and the book will come up. It's not hard to find. But I wanted to tell you a story about. I had mentioned that our dad during the war was still looking for his dad. So during World War II, he was overseas with his brothers, one of them being Robert.
Mhm.
Um, and he came across this magazine, and the magazine had an article in it, and it mentioned Charlie the Bug Workman. And so that really piqued his interest. So he kept the magazine, and when he came home from the war, he showed it to his mom. And he said, "Is this my dad?" And his mom took the magazine, threw it in the trash, and never talked about it.
Oh.
So it was like, wow. So when he was here, I was talking earlier about when he was here in 85, we went to this store that sold old magazines. The problem was he couldn't remember what year it was, what magazine it was, what issue it was. And so we spent about an hour going through all of these magazines. And the clerk asked us, "What are you looking for?" And so we told them, and they said, "Well, if you go 2 blocks down the street to the library, they have reference books with everyone's name who's ever been in a magazine
Oh,
until the 60s." And we're like, okay. So we went there, we found it, and this was in 85. And I don't remember if we actually found it and he took it home. I'm really wondering about that because we didn't find it in any of his research materials. So we're thinking we probably didn't. And I'm getting older, I just can't remember it. But one thing the FBI file did for us, after reading every single page, at the end of it, they have a magazine article on Louis Lepke. Lepke was a mob boss that Charlie worked for. And they wrote a note in the FBI file that said, Life magazine, February 28th, 1944.
So
wow.
they wrote down the magazine.
Oh,
I went on eBay, found that magazine. It wasn't hard. Ordered the magazine, and now I have the magazine and read through it. And there's an article in there on Lepke
I can't.
that covers a lot of the different pages. Another shout out, hello, Catherine. But that article that talks about Louis Lepke and the hit on Dutch Schultz mentions Charlie the Bug one time.
Yeah, and that whole magazine.
So we're thinking, you know what? That caught our dad's eye. He brought it home and showed it to his mom. And it really didn't get him anywhere.
No.
But I'm pretty sure he knew.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of gems that we're coming across unexpectedly, kind of solving a lot of questions that we have.
But there's also been some other incidents also where, like at our dad's funeral, there were Mafia men there. I don't remember it, but everybody else does.
Well, not everybody else. I
Well,
would say
some,
our cousin Jimmy does.
yeah.
And so
John,
he told
yeah.
us the story that we included. It's
Right.
just another confirmation that Charlie the Bug is our Charlie.
Yeah. Yeah.
wow.
And he kept an eye on us,
On his
so
family. Yeah.
yeah.
Because you guys had Mafia there, at his funeral, so they had to have known about you.
Well, don't be afraid just because we got Mafia blood.
No, I'm not.
Nothing like that.
It makes me more intrigued, and I want to be closer to you guys now. Thank you.
Okay. We're going to come and get you, okay? Yeah, but it's really, and it's really not that it's closed, but for this to happen so quickly, especially, we did not see this coming at all.
How long did you to make the book, to publish the book? How did you find a publisher?
Well, a friend of ours, All Access Network, Lee Triana Brown, she created this cover while we were on the phone with her, and she asked if we had a publisher. And I said, well, no. She hooked us up with her publisher. So we have a publisher, and Lee Triana created the cover.
So Pam and I was going back with updated versions. Actually, we were going through the alphabet, right?
Yeah.
Version H, version I, version J, version K.
That's every time that we redid it.
As we were updating it, Pam shared one of those versions with Vicki, our publisher. And we were on this podcast just talking about, at the time I thought, who's going to be interested in our family story? It's not that big a deal. It's not a big, thick book, Okay, I'll go on the podcast with Pam, and we talked about it. 2 days later, Vicki sends us, here's your manuscript. We're ready to publish it. And we went, okay, time out. This is not the most recent version. And we're hearing stories that we hadn't heard before from our cousins. And we want to include them in the book. And so that was very quick for us to go from that podcast. And the book has only been published since like the middle of March.
March 21st.
And so I can read for you the book overview on Amazon.
Okay.
Go.
Okay.
Everyone loves that.
Let's see. All right. So join us as we delve into our family's narrative, one filled with secrets, connections, and threads that we weave together across time and space. Pam wrote this. It's very good. This is not just history. It's our truth as we understand it, shaped by the shadows of the past and resilience of those who came before us. We used to believe no known associate of Murder Inc. knew of this information you are about to read. It turns out they did know, and they kept an eye on the family and reported to Charlie the Bug. Embark on this journey with us as we explore the challenges of piecing together our lineage in a world where disappearing meant becoming someone new. Discover the tales that have defined us and the bonds that unite us, even when the paths are unclear. In early March of 2025, we thought this book was ready to be published. Our research was complete, family stories were documented, and the day before releasing the manuscript to be published, a family member told us of a story we had not heard before. This story is now included and further confirms the Bug's life before the Mafia.
That is so awesome. I love that.
So I guess I wrote the end of it, but you wrote the body of it.
That's okay.
So go on Amazon.
Yeah.
It's easy to find. It's not very expensive. It's a small little book, and we would really ask that once you read it to leave us an honest review.
Right. Or if you listen to it on Audible, whatever. Hi, Catherine. Thank you, Catherine. And reviews are so important because the reviews is what sells the book. So, and not only that, but we like to see what everybody else thinks about it. Even if you don't believe it or we don't, it doesn't matter. It's just our family story.
So 2 things I want to say in all honesty. Pam and I are not making money on this book.
No.
It's costing us money.
Yes.
But at the same time, once we get to 50 reviews, Amazon will promote the book. And hopefully, so when we do book signings and other things, it will cost us less, but we don't think we'll ever break even.
No.
And so
how many are you at right now?
How much what?
How many more do you need to get to 50?
We're at 8 right now.
Okay. So
it'll take some time, I'm sure, but if everyone left a review, hi Jamie Lynn, thank you. Um, if everyone left a review that read it, we would probably be further. But you know, it's just
It's
taking
not
the time to
something
leave
that
a
people, yeah.
yeah, people just don't take the time to leave a review, and it's really important. But it's really important to us that they leave a review.
Okay. So you were talking about book signing. So for those of everybody listening or replaying this, where can they find you for your book signing?
Well, we are going to be at the Paracon this coming next Saturday in Tennessee. It's Red Bowling Springs, Tennessee. Hi, Kelly.
Thomas House, Shadows and Spirits Paracon,
Yeah. So
Saturday,
it's,
May 3rd.
yes, it's the Thomas House Hotel. And there's also going to be an investigation at the hotel that night. Um, the Paracon is from 9 to 6. Um, and then after that, they're going to do, they'll have an investigation. And I think there's also a group, the people who wrote the foreword for the book is Marty and Michael Perry. They're going to be there. They're actually going to be doing readings. Um, and so you can get a ticket to get into the group reading. There's all kinds of things going on there. I think there's a lot of giveaways. I think every vendor is going to have something to give away. And ours is going to be a signed book with a t-shirt. Um, there's just going to be so many people there.
Book signings is kind of a challenge because I'm in San Diego,
Right.
and Pam is in Indiana. And so to get us together is rather a challenge. It's not terribly expensive, but again, we're never going to make enough off of the book to pay for just one of us to fly
Yeah.
round trip. So right now, that's all we have scheduled is that one.
Well, it'll be so you guys could get together though too.
Oh yeah, because I was like, there's no way I can do this book signing by myself. You got to come. And so I talked him into coming, so he's coming in 2 days. So that'll be so much fun.
Lori,
Steve,
when are you investigating?
I'm not sure I'll be involved in the investigation, but who knows?
yeah, I mean, Steve has never been into the paranormal or anything like that. So, that's a different
Time out.
Okay. Go ahead.
Not necessarily that I haven't been into it. Actually, my experience with Michael and Marty Perry goes back probably 25 years. I even, when she was alive, I took my mom to a private reading with Michael and Marty because they used to be located in the San Diego area here, and they recently moved to Kentucky. And so they're going to be at the Paracon. Hello. They're going to be at the Paracon, but the, one of our chapters in the book talks about a reading that we had with Michael and Marty about Charlie and about a sketch that Marty did. So Michael is the connection with people that have passed. Sometimes you have, because he'll tell you, this is what they're telling me. He may not understand it, but it makes a lot of sense to you if you pay attention and listen. And what Marty does is she'll put on headphones and sketch someone that comes through to her. And most every time you're going to recognize the sketch, you're going to have a picture that matches that sketch and know who it is. And so when we had the reading, the picture that Pam's holding up is what she drew at our reading. And we weren't sure who it was. It didn't much makes sense to us because we had never seen Charlie in person. We'd never met his son Chuck, so we weren't sure who that was. But Pam has a story to go with that.
Yeah. So the author of the PGA to, what was it? From Murder Incorporated to the PGA Tour. The author of that book, I contacted him, and he said, I'll be happy to help you, whatever you need, blah blah blah. This is a couple years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and so when I got this sketch in 22, I sent him a picture of it, and he answered me like right away. I never got a message back right away anyway, but this time he messaged me right away, and he said, "Where did you get that? Did someone draw that out of a book?" And I said, "No, it is not drawn out of a book," but I did not tell him where I got it. Well,
go ahead.
And so actually, I think it was the email before this that he actually said, I don't need you to contact me anymore. I can't help you with anything. After he had told us that he would help us, because I had told him that I wanted him to do a 3-way call, with one of my siblings. And I would be interested in a DNA test with, one of his other family members. And he was like, not being involved or anything. Was hateful, kind of rude. And then when I sent him the picture of that sketch, he was like, "Where did you get that at?" So
his immediate response really makes us question.
Right.
He recognized the picture.
Yeah.
So we think it could be Chuck, Charlie's son, the golfer, or it could be Charlie.
Yeah.
So this is a picture of Chuck in 2015.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And this is a picture of Charlie. So that drawing, we think, could be either one of them. And
Right.
we think it would be really curious.
Yeah.
If that guy would talk to us and say, "Who do you think it is?"
Yeah.
Regardless, it's just, to me, it's another piece of circumstantial evidence we're on the right track.
And a psychic.
Yeah. And this sketch was drew by someone who knew nothing about this story, had never heard the story, did not know a thing, and was in San Diego.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it is fascinating. So, people that don't believe in the psychic medium that scribbles or whatever you want to call it, she actually draws. But when somebody does that, it means something, because a lot of mediums go from cards to just mediumship to writing, or both, or all. Everyone's different. So there's a lot to be said for psychic medium, especially Michael and Marty Perry. I think they set the bar on my level. They set the bar.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And I've never met them, and they're going to be at the Paracon, so I cannot wait.
Oh, yeah. I forgot you guys said that.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to thank you guys very much for coming on to the show and being able to help promote your guys' book.
Thank you.
Check it out, guys, on Amazon. The Bug's Life Before the Mafia. And like they said, they have it on Audible. Where else would you guys say that you can purchase this?
It's on Amazon, paperback, Kindle, and Audible. Or you can come to Tennessee next weekend and get a personalized signed copy.
I've really, really enjoyed listening to you guys. I'm serious. Like, I
Thank
love all this lineage and past relatives, and like I said, I still feel deeply for your dad. For looking for so long. Not ever having that answer, but kind of knowing. Deep down after, especially finding that magazine article, and then
Yeah,
mom.
our dad had a stepdad and he was their dad. He took over the family. So they did have great guidance throughout their life. Um, Out there for July Paranormal Rockdown. I don't know. I'm hoping so. I would love to go. I'm trying.
Out,
So,
out
you know,
where?
where's is that going to be at the in July? Is that the
Not the one
That's
in Connecticut, is it?
no,
I mean, Wisconsin, Broadhead, Wisconsin.
Oh, Wisconsin. Yeah.
Wisconsin? Yeah, Wisconsin. Um, yeah, I would love to go to that. I would love to.
Is there anything you guys want to plug before we end the show? Where to get a
Well,
hold of you guys or anything?
um, we've just been using our Facebook or our. I mean, you can send us a message. We can send you our email. Um, you know, if you need to do something like that. But I want to thank Alitriana Brown for creating the cover and Vicki Peplow, our publisher. Thank you so much. Um, and seriously, could not have done it without either one of them.
Please, if you guys get their book, leave them that review too.
Yeah,
So thank you guys so much again. And I hope you guys have a good night.
you too. Thank you, Alicia.
Thanks.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
All right. Well, that has been another episode of Unturned Pages. And like I said, go get the book. Go check out the book. Leave that review, guys. And with that being said, thank you. Stay spooky.